Now, it was pretty tense and a sharp escalation. Iran fired air defenses at a major airbase and a nuclear site near the central city of Isfahan. The American media is quoting some sources, and it claims that this was actually an Israeli counterattack on Iran. Now, the Iranians are downplaying the incident. And what is interesting is that the Israelis have been saying that they will be attacking Iran as a reprisal for the drone missile strikes. The Israelis have remained tight-lipped. The Americans are maintaining a strategic silence on these reported Israeli strikes in Iran, asserting that it has no role to play whatsoever in these offensive attacks. And this has come in from the American Secretary of State, who is in Italy for a G7 foreign ministers meeting.
On the first question, the reports that you've seen, I'm not going to speak to that, except to say that the United States has not been involved in any offensive operations.
Now, the Italian foreign minister, who was at the same venue, said that Israel had given the United States a last-minute heads-up about the drone attack that was carrying out on Iran.
It is already known. It has been informed. The United States were notified at the last minute. But there was no sharing by the United States. It was mere information.
A senior Iranian official has said that Tehran has no plans of any immediate reprisal against Israel.
The sound that was heard this morning in Isfahan was not an explosion. It was the firing of the rockets of the powerful air defense systems at an object in the air, and there was no damage from that.
In a speech, the Iranian President Ibrahim Raisi hailed Tehran's retaliatory attacks on Israel about a week ago, but he also maintained a pretty studied silence on the latest explosions that were effected by Israel. Remember, just 2 days ago, Ibrahim Raisi had said that even a quote-unquote tiniest invasion by Israel will be met with a massive response. On the streets of Tehran, the Iranians, of course, came out in large numbers. They shouted slogans against the state of Israel and held up placards in favor of the Palestinians. The Israeli government had indicated that an alleged drone attack on the city south of Tehran was meant to send a signal rather than to cause damage. Israel has a long tradition of maintaining some kind of ambiguity over its nuclear weapons and intelligence operations, and the silence appears to be a part of its messaging. The Israeli allies, including the United States of America, have been pressing for this entire week to ensure that there is no further retaliation, and even if there is, then it would be calibrated not to provoke more escalation from Iran. The Russians and the Chinese have also given some fresh statements where they've urged that all sides should exercise restraint. This clear escalation underscores the rising tensions between Iran and Israel, with direct confrontations occurring beyond the usual proxy warfare. The situation remains very fluid, with both sides remaining tight-lipped, but the potential for further escalation still remains. There are many unanswered questions which remain hidden in the sands of West Asia. So let's now try and decode the motive behind these two blasts that were effected in Tabriz and Isfahan. Tabriz and Isfahan are the two locations where these blasts were effected, apparently by Israel. The Iranians say that the air defenses were activated at the suspicious objects that did not cause any damage and were shot down. These two cities are about 900 kilometers apart, so it is highly unlikely that they were randomly chosen. Others have suggested that the drones may be the so-called quadcopters, which have 4 rotors and are basically small drones, but there is no clarity if there was an attack using fighter jets, missiles, or indeed quadcopters. If indeed Israel did launch an attack from its home ground, then the projectiles of the jets would have to travel for nearly 2,000 kilometers. It would need to travel over Jordan, Syria, and Iraq. Israel's arsenal possesses missiles which can travel the distance. Jericho 2 has a range of about 3,500 kilometers. Jericho 3 can cover distances of almost 6,000 kilometers. In a sense, they can easily target Iran. Let's also now try and understand as to what are these two cities and why they are important. In Isfahan, there is a major airbase which has long been the home of Iran's fleet of American-made F-14 Tomcats that were purchased well before the 1979 Islamic Revolution. The facility at Isfahan also has research reactors as well as handling fuel production and other activities for Iran's civil nuclear program. The complex at Tabriz is reportedly Iran's missile base that houses a number of missile silos. It is suspected that Iran had launched the first April attack from these two locations. And additionally, the mountainous topography around Tabriz and the hardened underground silos means that they are pretty hard to be destroyed by even a missile strike. Now, the attack was widely expected, with Israel providing indications throughout this week that it would not let an unprecedented Iranian barrage of over 300 ballistic missiles, cruise missiles and drones go without an Israeli response, leading to fears that the situation could actually spiral out of control because of these tit-for-tat attacks, resulting in an all-out war. All right, now to give us more perspective on this, we're being joined by Mr. Gregory Brew, who is a Eurasia Group analyst who specializes, of course, on Iranian issues. He's joining us on this broadcast from New York. Now, Mr. Brew, in your assessment, do you think Israel is likely to stage more attacks after this, or without American support, do you think Netanyahu will now refrain from staging further attacks on Iran?
I think for now, it's likely that Israel does not continue attacks against Iran directly. I think what this latest Israeli action shows is that Israel is conscious of escalating with Iran and is also conscious of retaining U.S. support. And of course, the U.S. has been very clear that it does not want to see escalation between Israel and Iran. So for the short term, I think it looks very likely that Israel ceases attacks against Iran directly for now. I do, however, think it's very likely that Israel continues to attack Iran's allies in the region. There were strikes against Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria that came with the Israeli attack on Iran directly. So Iran and Israel are likely to continue exchanging blows in the region. But for now, I think this attack shows that this round of back and forth between Iran and Israel has come to an end.
But also considering as to how fluid the situation is at the moment, do you think the United States is at risk of getting sucked into this conflict between Iran and Israel, even though formally Washington appears to have said that it won't back any of Tel Aviv's revenge strikes on Iran?
I think the U.S. is very conscious of the escalatory risks between Iran and Israel right now, given that both sides have shown a willingness to attack each other directly. Iran's attack on Israel last weekend and then today's attack by Israel against Iran shows that the escalatory risk is still very high. So the United States will do what it can to keep the conflict from growing. However, the U.S. has also shown that it will stand by Israel if Israel is attacked directly. The United States is continuing to support Israel, albeit also providing pressure on the Netanyahu government regarding the offensive in Rafah and the humanitarian situation in Gaza. So there continues to be pressure there. However, there is a risk that if Israel and Iran do exchange blows again and it grows into a broader confrontation, there is a strong possibility that the United States does get pulled in support of Israel.
And also, Mr. Brew, looking at how things are playing out domestically as well, Joe Biden is fighting a re-election, but for Benjamin Netanyahu, his political future would be in doubt once hostilities, of course, end. Do you think Netanyahu will try to keep the hostilities going on just so that he can continue to remain in power?
I think Netanyahu does benefit in the short term from a continuation of the current security crisis, right? Both in terms of maintaining Israeli operations in Gaza and also keeping tensions with Iran very high. Both seem to serve Netanyahu's short-term interest of remaining in office. He is currently quite unpopular. There is quite a lot of pressure inside Israel to push for a new government. But so long as the security environment remains unstable, that does benefit Netanyahu, at least in the short term. However, the conditions allowing him to remain in power will not last indefinitely. And there will come a moment, either through new elections or a change in government, that is likely to push Netanyahu out of his position. So as far as keeping him in power, yes, this does potentially help him, but his odds of remaining in his position through the end of the year still look pretty doubtful.
All right, thank you very much indeed, Mr. Gregory Brew, for joining us and getting us all those insights there. For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.